Do you know what significant events have occurred on this day in world history? In 1903, one of the greatest tragedies in U.S. history occurred, the fire at the Iroquois Theater in Chicago. This tragedy was the deadliest fire in a single building in the history of the United States. During a musical performance of Bluebeard, a fire broke out on the theater stage and quickly engulfed the building. Due to the building's structural features and lack of modern safety systems, the fire quickly spread throughout the auditorium. Trapped in the theater, the audience was unable to evacuate in time, resulting in the deaths of 602 people. This number still stands as a record for such a tragedy in U.S. history. In the aftermath, new standards for public buildings, including theaters, were established, including requirements for emergency exits, fire protection, and fire suppression equipment. This event was the catalyst for a change in attitude towards safety at public events around the world. It reminded us of the importance not only of enjoying cultural events, but also of ensuring that these events take place in a safe environment. In 2000, on the day of the Philippines' Rizal Day celebration, a series of explosions occurred in the Manila metro, killing 22 people and injuring about 100. The explosions occurred in different parts of the Manila metro during the celebration of a national holiday honoring a Filipino hero. It was part of a broader series of terrorist attacks aimed at heightening political and social tensions in the country. The attack was one of the largest in the region in the early 21st century. In the aftermath of the attack, the Philippine government and the international community stepped up the fight against terrorism and developed new security standards for public places. This event served as a reminder of the need to constantly prepare for possible terrorist threats and the importance of ensuring security in public places, such as transportation and festive events. The series of explosions also raised questions about the level of security in public transportation. After the tragedy, new standards were introduced, and now security has become a key element in the planning of major public events. Do you think modern security measures can prevent similar tragedies in the future? On December 30th, 1927, the first Tokyo subway opened in Japan. This event was an important step in the development of urban transportation and mobility in one of the world's largest cities. The first subway line, connecting Asakusa and Ueno stations, was only 2.2 kilometers long, but it marked the first step in creating one of the largest and most efficient transportation systems in the world. At the time of its opening, Tokyo was already a huge city of over 7 million people, and the need for fast, convenient, and safe transportation was acute. This subway was the first in Asia and an important milestone in the development of urban and transportation systems in other countries. Tokyo went on to become a leader in subway construction, and its system is still considered one of the best in the world. This discovery also significantly changed Tokyo's infrastructure, allowing the city to grow uninterrupted despite the heavy strain on the transportation system. On December 31st, 1600, the British East India Company was founded, one of the most famous and powerful trading companies in history. It was not just a trading company, but a powerful instrument of British imperialist policy that became a major player in the international arena and subsequently influenced many aspects of world history. The creation of the company was an important step in the development of the British Empire and its colonial ambitions. The East India Company was established to organize trade with the countries of the East, particularly India, China, and other Southeast Asian countries. The company was granted exclusive trading rights and wielded enormous power. It had its own navy, army, and even the right to conduct diplomatic negotiations. The company thus became an important element of British foreign policy. Over time, the British East India Company became an economic and political force that had a major impact on life in India, where it actually began to govern the country. This in turn led to numerous conflicts, such as the Sepoy Rebellion of 1857, and became an important milestone in the history of British colonialism. On December 31st, 1935, American Charles Darrow patented one of the world's most famous board games, Monopoly. This game, which turned out to be not only an entertainment but also a cultural phenomenon, brought Darrow both popularity and remarkable financial success. But her path to fame was a fascinating one. It all began in 1933, when Charles Darrow, an economist by training, conceived of a game that reflected the social and economic processes of the time. The first version of Monopoly was handmade and popularized among Darrow's friends, who quickly appreciated it. Gradually, the game gained popularity, and he decided to patent it in 1935. Darrow's decision was crucial, and Parker Brothers agreed to publish the game. Although the publishers initially had doubts about the game's success, Monopoly turned out to be a real hit. The game, which reflected the process of buying, selling, and renting real estate, was a great reflection of the spirit of America at the time, a time of economic crisis and social change. Do you like to play Monopoly? On December 31, 1904, New York City witnessed the beginning of one of the world's most famous traditions, a massive New Year's Eve celebration in Times Square. This celebration was a true breakthrough in big city culture, and Times Square, then known as Long A Truk, began its journey to fame. Since the beginning of the 20th century, New York has become one of the largest and most dynamic metropolitan areas in the world. With the transformation of this part of Manhattan into a center for cultural events, the idea of holding a massive New Year's celebration on one of the city's largest plazas was born. Long AKR was located in the center of business life and had already become a place for important meetings and public events. The 1904 celebration in Times Square began with the ceremonial launch of the New Year's balloon, one of the main symbols of this tradition, which later became an integral part of the festivities. Thousands of people gathered in the square to celebrate this moment, and although the celebration was much smaller than it is today, this moment laid the foundation for a great tradition. A few years later, the number of participants in this celebration grew rapidly, and Times Square became famous all over the world. Since then, this place has become a symbol of the new year, and millions of people from all over the world look forward to this celebration every year. Have you ever celebrated New Year's Eve in Times Square? In 153 BC, Rome made an important change in the calendar that would have a profound effect on the entire history of mankind. To ensure that the new consul could be sent to the war in Spain as soon as possible, the Roman priests moved the beginning of the consular year from March 1st to January 1st. This was done for practical reasons, to organize the army and administrative changes that required urgent decisions. From that moment on, January 1st became the official beginning of the year for Roman consuls, and in 46 BC, Emperor Julius Caesar, reforming the Roman calendar, introduced the beginning of the year on January 1st into the civil calendar as well. This decision was part of his great calendar reform, which aimed to organize chronology and preserve the accuracy of astronomical observations. By moving to January 1st, Rome became the first major empire to begin the year not according to the tradition of the vernal equinox, but according to an astronomical and administrative cycle. This new beginning of the year quickly spread to other civilizations and remained the basis of the modern calendar. This important decision left a profound mark on world history and shaped the way we celebrate the beginning of the year today. 1863, the United States. At that time, the country was in the midst of the Civil War, which had been going on for 2 years. The South, which supported the slave system, fought against the northern states, which had already abolished slavery or were planning to do so. At this decisive moment, on January 1st, 1863, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln issued his famous Emancipation Proclamation. This is not just a document. It is a step toward revolutionary changes in the country that could affect the course of history. The emancipation of slaves became not only a moral imperative, but also a strategic military move, as numerous slave farms in the South were important sources of supply for the Confederacy. The Manifesto declared that all slaves in the territories controlled by the southern states would be free. Although the document could not immediately free all slaves, it sent an important signal that slavery would no longer be accepted in the United States and gave new impetus to the African American rights movement. Lincoln's proclamation was one of the pivotal moments that led to the final abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, passed later in 1865. On January 1st, 1788, the first edition of what would become one of the world's most famous newspapers, The Times, was published in London. Until then, the newspaper had been known as the Daily Universal Register. It was not just a name change, but an important milestone in the development of British and world journalism. Since its founding in 1785, the paper has strived to become an important source of information for a wide audience. In its early editions, the paper covered a wide range of news, from political to cultural, but over time, it began to focus on more in-depth investigations of important social and political events. The Times began to provide platforms for the discussion of current issues, helping to set standards for future media. The publication of the first issue on January 1, 1788, in London's Fleet Street, was a milestone for the entire media world. The newspaper began to influence political decisions, social change, and even international relations, becoming one of the most authoritative sources of information of its time. It remained the leading newspaper in Britain and changed the face of media for centuries to come. What do you think has helped the Times stay on top over the centuries? Friends, if you liked our video, put a like, subscribe to the channel to learn about many significant historical events.